is not collaborating. She's actively resisting.
Engage.
Citizens of Earth, gird your loins and open your minds. You have now willfully submitted to the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. Hello, and welcome to the 9th official episode of the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. Don't ask me why I am speaking like a Dracula. Today I was going to be opening with myself and the dear doctor, but it seems that he is probably off getting groceries or something, and so I'm introducing our first guest a little bit early today. I'm okay with it. Thank you. Oh, hello, Survey and Survey. Thank you for joining us. Hello, hello. Before we begin, I'll go on with the usual things that I say. I am known by many names, but today you may call me the Mad Hat Cat. If you must speak of me in the third person, perhaps to proclaim the wonders of our most deviant and devious party, you may use the pronouns they, them, theirs, themself. And now, in lieu of introducing my dear doctor, I would like to introduce to you my sweet scarlet rose in a field of daisies, Queen of Webs. Hello.
Oh, hi.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really happy to have you on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Go ahead.
Well, y'all probably don't know me from my Magic the Gathering podcast.
Link in the description.
MTG Study Hall. It is a subset of one of the bigger, it's a Universes, which is a different card game channel, mostly TCG University, but they do a bunch of other card game stuff, and we're like their Magic channel. So.
Well, I've gotten to watch that a few times, and even though I don't play Magic the Gathering myself, I am familiar with it in a general sense, but I've never really had the opportunity to get into it. It's still a really fun time to watch and hear all of you speak very passionately. Everyone who knows me knows that that is my big thing. I love to watch people who are passionate about just about anything, as long as it's not like the not fun kind of destructive, because there's the fun kind of destructiveness that we like here on the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy, and then there's like, but no, actually that's bad. That actually hurts, and we don't like that. It doesn't hurt in the fun way. I am gonna check really quick because I see messages popping up. Okay, yes. The doctor says that he has gotten wrapped up in music. Apparently, he has many new synths to be playing with right now. So we will devise a punishment for him later. What say you?
Let's do it.
And I see he's at the very least joining up in the comments section. I can see you there. So get your butt in the room.
It's very rude of you.
I was not able to get our little episode title card video ready for today, although I hope everyone enjoyed like the new shortened cut of incoming message that I posted a couple weeks ago, but kind of a altered version that was under 200 megabytes so that StreamYard would accept it as something I could upload. Hopefully you enjoyed it. But, oh God, just lost my train of thought. It's gone. It's gone. I'll get back. I'll jump back on the track. But I hope you enjoyed that. Even though I didn't get the episode title card up today, what are we talking about today? The general topic is the pros and cons of individualism, which is a word with many meanings, but and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the various definitions of the word, but in particular, we are speaking of it in the like capital I individualism sense, stemming from the Enlightenment period and carrying forward into our dear old capitalist West. And there will be many points in therein that we will go hither and thither over. Later on, we will also have a second guest be joining us in about a half hour, I believe. But before we jump into everything, all right, Dave says that he needs a link. I gave a link, Dave, but I'll send it to you again because I'm a kind soul. I may be a villain, but I am a merciful villain. Copy once again. All right, let's see if he can make it in there. And then perhaps between the three of us, after he has a chance to introduce himself for anyone who is here for the first time, who has not been joining us for the past couple of months, he may introduce himself. And before I do hear him knocking at the door just now, but before I let him in, my dear Queen, is there anything... I suppose you mentioned the YouTube channel that you are sometimes on, but is there anything else that you would like to include about yourself, or would you prefer to remain behind a shroud of mystery?
I will allow my opinions and can't think of the word, but I will allow my presence to speak for itself.
Very good, very good. All right, well, in that case, I will open the door and allow him in. That's right, put down your phone, I see you! And at the stream.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you for joining us. Don't worry, I'm teasing about you getting wrapped up with stuff.
I have
nothing else to say. We'll plan your punishment later. But I wanted you to be able to reintroduce yourself before we dive in to our usuals.
Hi, I am the great and mighty, or at least somewhat intoxicated Dr. Zodiac. If you should refer to me in the third person, he, him, or my lord is just fine. I just got done writing my first song on my new Mac, so I'm very pleased and happy with myself. And
it better be a good one. If it is, I might forgive you for your tardiness.
Well, it's in a chat group that we belong to, so you can give it a listen.
Oh, good, you did upload it. Fantastic. Yep. By the way, all of this is, of course, terribly ironic because it is usually me who is running perpetually at least 10 minutes late for a number of reasons, and so I'm clearly just trying to milk this for as much as I can.
We decided to vary the programming a little bit. Now it's my turn to be late.
You also missed the new opening. I might just go and send it to you later so that you can watch it. I had to shorten it so that it was under 200 megabytes. Well, now that we have everyone here, I would love it if we could do the usual thing that we do to get ourselves in the proper mindset before we begin any kind of discussion, be it a prosperity episode or a popcorn episode. I also added kind of a differentiation, which is now a word, down in the description below to tell folks the difference between prosperity episodes and popcorn episodes. But differences though they may have, we always like to start with a reading from the Party Manifesto so that we can put ourselves in the proper mindset before we begin whatever discussion it is that we're having, to remind us to, if we're speaking about other human beings, they're other human beings. And we should try to treat them with kindness, if at all possible. It's not always possible, but whenever possible. And remind ourselves that we are fallible human beings, and that throughout our discussion, we would like to not turn into the monsters that we aspire to take down.
Mostly.
I think, who did I have beginning? I think I had Lily beginning. I had Dave beginning. I think Dave's beginning. Dave, will you start us off, please?
Rule number 1. Whenever possible, supervillains must treat others with kindness, civility, and respect. One never knows who they might be addressing and what sort of day they've had.
Rule number 2. Hate is hate and should be directed towards systems wicked and behaviors most foul, rather than toward individual persons or groups en masse.
Rule number 3. Thoughtful deviation drives progress. Embrace your considerate deviance and let it guide you.
Rule number 4. Your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said aloud and your actions in the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely.
Rule number 5. The party will not shun the ignorant, but willful ignorance is a crime of the highest degree, and rehabilitation must either be scheduled or performed on the perpetrator's own time. And finally,
number 6. The party, much like Socrates, knows for certain that they know nothing for certain and reserves the right to refine and amend its manifesto on an ongoing basis.
And like I said, the reason that we always start off with the party manifesto is that even though, we may be upset about things, frustrated with things, or individual persons, we still try to focus on discussing behaviors rather than making personal attacks. And I mean, eventually one of us is going to, get just a little bit too much of a twitch in the eye and have to make a personal attack on someone's appearance or perhaps their last name or something. I myself have still not taken off the Chrome extension that transforms former President 45's surname from Trump to Drumpf, which is a silly thing, but I was very tired of saying his name all over the place. It works on Twitter even. I don't know how that happens, but I love that I still have this extension. That being said, there is nothing funny about the surname Drumpf. It's a very strong, presumably German name, and won't have any of that business here. So, like I said, we today are talking about individualism, the pros, the cons, the various definitions of the word, and where that sort of philosophy, that political ideology came from. We're not going to get too deep into it. I mostly want to keep this very accessible, and rather than just like giving a history lesson, I kind of want to hear what people's personal ideas about it are, their experiences with it, what they have heard other people refer to it as, or how someone else they know would describe it. And like I said, we'll just start right off with what is individualism? What are we referring to when we say capital I individualism? So we all obviously know what an individual is. It is a singular human, and they are separate from a group, a collective. Another word that you will frequently see in put into contrast beside individualism is collectivism. But an individual is not necessarily not a component of something like collectivism. I love how the word collectivism has gotten brought up in a couple of video essays that I've watched over the years. The Borg inevitably come up from Star Trek, which I love.
Well, the Federation too.
Yeah. If you'll excuse me for just a minute, I have a delivery that literally just arrived. I'll be right back.
Jesus.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Get your life together.
As best I can. What can I say?
It's like he requires food and drink to continue on functioning. I personally don't understand this. There's nothing in this bottle. It's just air.
Right. All I need is whiskey.
So, Lily, when you hear the word individualism, like let's just say free of context, or heck, do you recall the last time before I brought it up for this episode that you heard the word?
Well, so usually individualism for me gets brought up within context of I guess American libertarianism specifically, like the strain of it that, because like in other parts of the world, libertarianism is more synonymous with like our like the like with like classical anarchism. But so generally when like American libertarianism is brought up, usually individualism comes up as like part and parcel with that, as like the exaltation of the individual as the fundamental piece of society. I guess is the best way I could put it.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up anarchism, because funnily enough, classical that's one of the things that I would like to talk about today. Classical liberalism versus anarchism, and how they are both they both value the idea of the individual and individual freedoms, and individual autonomy, but the way that they want to go about achieving like the maximization of that, of making sure that everyone has personal autonomy, they're pretty different. They're pretty different. And yeah, the whole idea of individual liberties, it's not like it didn't exist before the Enlightenment period in Western Europe. There are examples of individualistic ideas in Taoism and not Confucianism. Confucianism, I think, is a little bit more heavy on the collectivism side.
It's pretty heavy on that.
Yeah. but it would make sense, I think, that Taoism, which tends to be like, the middle path, where you would want to balance personal autonomy with kind of a collective good, and I mean it's always been kind of my thinking that it's just like anything else. I need a t-shirt that says destroy the binary, even though I would probably never wear it outside my house, because I don't think most people would get what I'm going at, because like I don't want them to look at that and say, no, you're one of those trans people that wants to destroy gender. And I'm like, no, gender's cool. I think your gender's awesome. I think your gender's awesome. I like my gender. But I mean, destroying the binary doesn't necessarily mean doing away with everything that you know and love. It just means allowing those things, those two ends of the binary. Hell, you could even say that for individualism and collectivism, that it doesn't just have to be the one or the other. There are other things outside of those, and you can also find a blend between those two things that we tend to think of as binary ends of a spectrum. Be it gender or politics.
Exactly like our notions of gender here. The idea of like individualism and collectivism as like polar opposites, even on the same gradient, is not exactly like, it's not consistent with reality. Just like notions of male and female as opposites on some like, on some gradient are bullshit too. I mean, it is. It's all like it's all framing that we've been taught to accomplish a certain, like to build a certain mindset in the population.
Yeah, and I mean, those people who I think would argue that yes, that is true, but it's for a good reason. that they did that, I think I could talk to those people. But the people who say like, no, that's not an intentional thing. There may be a lot of wide and varied subconscious contributing thoughts, but that is still the intent, is to, for most people, I think, to raise up citizens who, maybe not raise up, but to mold as they grow, citizens that behave in a certain way that will migrate towards certain roles, so that all of the bits and bobs within society are taken care of. Dave, you were going to say a thing, but I missed it.
I don't know. It was a few minutes ago. I do think specifically when we're talking about binary in relation to the United States, we are a nation that deals with everything in a particularly bipolar fashion. It's an either or in a particularly staggering sort of way. So you're not given a whole lot of options. You're given a yes or a no. There is no in-between point. And I think that has become something where that has become defining not just in politics, but also in just how we view the world, how we view people, how we view gender elements and things along those lines. And it's something that we as a nation could definitely spend a little time working on. Unfortunately, due to the way that we're set up in a political way, that tends to mirror everything else that we have, a mirror effect in everything else that we do. You're a Republican or a Democrat. There is no room for a Green Party. There is no room for a Libertarian Party. You're either or. And there's no middle point.
Well, and then unfortunately, what I think happens when folks are so driven into binaries like that, the people who do identify very much with a libertarian philosophy or with an anarcho philosophy, they feel so pushed to the edge, so exiled to the fringe, that is what they become, and they don't want to work with the dominating binary anymore. And I don't know, it seems kind of impractical. Folks in the GOP and the DNC, where I don't know, I kind of get the feeling that they're like, oh well, they're fringe politics, so like it doesn't matter. Maybe if we just don't include them enough, they'll go away.
No, but over time they become revolutionary movements.
What happened on January 6th? Did they go away? No, they didn't.
No, they showed up and they were fucking livid. And to be perfectly honest, if there is an awful lot, and speaking of individualism, there is an awful lot of anger that is going through our country for a lot of particularly valid reasons. People are legitimately economically afraid on a whole lot of levels. They are socially afraid. There's changes in the process, and people always find change to be particularly difficult. And especially when it's social change happening across economic stagnation, it makes for a whole collective group of fairly easy targets in the public eye.
And it's unfortunate that I don't know, we don't seem to be very equipped as a culture to process things well. Like we don't process change. We process like what we've always known. And I mean, I suppose you could say that like for the whole history of humanity. But I don't know. I'd argue against that a little bit, because I mean, if humanity has shown anything, is that it's highly adaptable. Not in the, I'm so sorry, my hair is like falling down, so I'm just gonna take it out.
At some point, I had that issue too, and then I decided to take it in the most radical way I possibly could. That problem.
Speaking of radicalism, but yeah, humans have shown themselves to be highly adaptable. So adaptable that we can change our living conditions. We can live in geographies where previously there was not enough water to support a very large population or any population. There was too much heat. There's too much cold. And of course, we got to the point where we realized, oh shit, we're actually fucking things up by bending the environment to our will. That's a discussion for another day. But you know, I mean, it does kind of blend into that idea behind individualism, because you know, one of the things that I'm frequently whinging about is the fact that major corporations who are, you know, the largest producers of not only air pollution, but also environmental pollution, or rather, you know, like water pollution, land pollution. So plastics going in the ocean everywhere, shriveling down into microplastics over time. And so it's just in fucking everything, which is unfortunate. And, you know, toxic sludge going into rivers and things. And then they have the fucking audacity to be like, well, if only all you individual consumers recycled more, we wouldn't be in this predicament. It's up to you.
It's a wonderful form of distraction away from the key problem. I'm not the problem, you are. So you have to straighten your shit so that way I can do what I need to do.
Okay. So I used to be very like, okay, so
major truths being revealed.
I'm just trying to find the right thread here to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to be of the mind that, yes, absolutely, 100%, like corporations offsetting like the good that they could be doing to fix the climate problem, to fix that whole debacle, right, onto consumers. Like putting that onto consumers is unfair. It's also really true that like if every single consumer collectively, if every single consumer did the right thing, recycled everything we could, did everything we could, it still wouldn't matter if, you know, the corporations weren't doing their part, weren't
yeah,
you know,
no.
But sorry, that was where I was, right? But I mean, it's also still important for individuals to do their, you know, their part too. It's not even mostly our fault, but also we, you know, it doesn't hurt.
Oh yeah, definitely. There is absolutely, you know, I would say a personal responsibility, an individual responsibility, because yes, the largest producers need to be pulling their weight. We as individuals, I don't think can chip away at that. If we are, even if we were in, you know, larger groups participating in that particular responsibility of reduce, reuse, recycle. Because all three of those things are important. Not everything is recyclable, or recyclable in a practical way. Like, yes, theoretically, X amount or X percentage of this number of plastic can be broken back down again and made into new materials. But at the same time, that's still only going to put like a little tiny chip away in the problem. So it has to be a combination of individual responsibility and responsibility of larger groups. And I mean, you know, that it goes back to the thing. It's not just collectivism. It can't just be collectivism. It can't just be individualism. Practically speaking, like almost anything, you know, whether it is a business venture or an artistic venture, any kind of agriculture that is not what's it called? Sustenance farming. What am I thinking of?
Subsistence farming.
Subsistence farming. Thank you. Because subsistence farming is basically just raising enough food to feed you and the people who live on your land, right? I believe that's the general idea. But unless we go back to that, which I don't see us doing anytime soon, unless we are forced to from, you know, not backlash, from the result of an impending nuclear apocalypse or whatever it happens to be. Maybe there's a mad cult leader who has planted weapons of mass destruction in every major city. I always have to at least once per episode reference the movie we just watched for Us Three Blokes. This time it was Kaboom, and but
the title of the film is Kaboom. Just
Kaboom.
Like the onomatopoeia for an explosion.
Kaboom.
Oh. Cool. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And I know that I think, and I'm definitely guilty of this, of kind of falling into that sense of like peril and guilt, personal responsibility, or guilty from the perspective of I have shirked my personal responsibility as far as reduce, reuse, recycle goes, because, you know, I do try, but if, like, let's give a really mundane example. Something has gone bad in the fridge, and it is like so nasty that it would be cruel of me to try and dispose of the stuff because I have another person living in my house, and I should have taken care of that when it wasn't so fucking gross. And sometimes, just for my own personal sanity, I have to make for me the very hard decision of it's not going to be worth the time and the grief. You're going to hurt yourself poring over this, so you just have to throw it away. And I hate when I have to do that. I try to do it as little as possible, try to do it not at all, but again, but I think, you know, it makes sense that we would be susceptible to that kind of corporatized guilt, because that's what we were raised in. You know, not only are we individuals and we have our own needs and wants and desires and preferences for things, but we are also responsible for everything that we do in all of our situation. There is no relation to where you were born, to whomst you were born, what kind of school you got sent to, because you chose it. You chose it when you were 5 years old. You chose what school to go to, you punk. I see. I hear someone else at the dungeon lair door. So let me just let in our second guest for today. Sometime bloke, sometime villain, all-time grease screener, Lord Starhawk. Add to stream.
Hello.
Greetings. Welcome to the Madhouse.
Thank you. Good to be here.
People in the room. I'm
Nice
so
to see everybody.
excited.
I have an opening comment prepared.
Oh no.
Oh, do you now?
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
share.
The average American consumes approximately 1 credit card's worth of plastics per week because of the saturation of plastics in the environment.
You got that from the John Oliver bit, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I know that episode was so hard for me to watch, and it was awful because I did have to remind myself, like, shit, actually, I am totally guilty of the whole like truly beating myself up on I beat myself up enough as it is. I have enough self-loathing. I don't need to add on top of the fact that, like, I'm sorry that I was born into a society where everything is consumable and everything is disposable, and it just kind of doesn't matter.
Right.
I didn't mean to be.
I myself
sometimes
consume.
think I meant to be born pre-industrial times, but
Yeah.
I probably would have been burned as a witch. I'm sure. I just realized that
Almost certainly.
my logo is covering up my beautiful Lily's face. Here we go.
I personally consume at least 2 credit cards worth of plastic a week, just
Not
because
by
That's a lot.
just does that.
just
Yeah.
because it tastes good. Yeah, yeah. I
I do
grated.
need to clarify here.
Yeah,
When you say consume, you mean imbibe, right? Not
Oh,
like
Yeah, I grate it onto my spaghetti like cheese. Sure, that's how I dispose of my credit cards anyway.
I mean, that's one way to like get the process going, I suppose. I will be really this is completely unrelated to individualism as a philosophy, political ideology, but I have been really curious for a while. Like, there are all kinds of great theoretical technologies that folks are clamoring about whenever someone brings up a particular environmental pollution issue, like rebuilding the ozone layer and sending up different kinds of weather balloons in order to capture the gases that are heating up the atmosphere. I'm really curious, and I feel like I've never really seen anything like this. Some sort of technology or discovery of some sort of microbe that can actually break down plastics into their base elements, that we can just I don't know, take tanks of seawater out and release the microbes inside, because you don't want to just release that into the fucking ocean unless they're naturally occurring, I suppose. Because that, again, it could wreak havoc. But there are actually, I can't remember the specifics of it right now, but I will link it in the show notes, which that's a thing that I'm gonna start doing, instead of just putting all my links immediately below in the description box. I am actually going to include a link to a Google Doc that will contain links to things that we've referenced in the show. But there is some study that I was reading about right now, and I want to say it's a kind of bioplastic. So plastics that are, instead of being made from crude oil, are made from different components that can break down in the soil and can break down in industrial compost settings. But in order to make that a feasible, usable material that we could use to, make medical equipment, safe food storage, there are many useful things that we can do with plastics. I mean, anyone who has a 3D printer would be like, but they are also trying to take into account and run simulations like, well, is it going to affect any particular kind of wildlife? Is it going to affect the water supply? What's it going to do? So that's all very interesting.
Maybe they'll come up with some kind of nanite in the future that'll go in and break that stuff down, and maybe they'll be bio. The
future better be in the next 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
the world's on fire. We can't just say, well, maybe they'll come up with it someday. No, now. Give the scientists money.
Right.
Please.
The problem is that the people with the money are a little bit vested in terms of interest.
Yeah, that's maybe kind of one of the not so great things. One might say a con of individualism. They're like, well, it's my money. I can spend it on what I want. And why should I have to care about the future of the planet? I'm not going to be around to see it. I'm going to enjoy myself now. And or they don't even go through any kind of thought process like that. It doesn't even occur to them that anything outside themselves exists. But it is kind of the nature of existence, unless we are all, in fact, in the Matrix.
Yeah. Well, and people in that general class, they are so far out of touch from us common folk. Well, Dr. Zodiac accepted, my lord. But they just don't see the world from the same vantage point that we do. We're down here, we see what's going on with our environment, and we're the ones that drink the tap water, and they're the ones that drink the artesian spring water, and so they couldn't give a rat's ass.
So a shithouse rat's ass.
A shithouse rat's ass.
Well, and those of us in the Midwest, we don't even see really like the truly devastating effects of it. And I'm glad that there's more reporting going on that isn't just saying like, oh, the coastlines are encroaching upon Florida, upon California, upon the Carolinas. I believe there were 2 of them. But also talking about folks where the land has just been so overworked that places that were once grasslands have now become basically deserts, and the soil is totally unusable. That reminds me there of another link that I would like to put in the show notes to a particular TED Talk. There is a scientist who is working with a team that are working to restore grasslands to their original habitat, and using the animals that would typically inhabit that place to kind of help, revitalize the soil to get things to grow again. It's pretty cool. Like it's not enough. None of these one things on their own, none of these individual things are going to be the thing that solves the climate crisis, solves the plastics throughout every biosystem ever crisis, but it will be many things all coming together.
Well, it's kind of the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Will.
So before we get too far away from it, I think it's a little. I think it might be giving folks a little too much benefit of the doubt to ascribe the attitude of the super rich to just not really being tuned into the experiences of everybody else. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the people in the positions to fix this are also insulated from the consequences of climate catastrophe by their money. It's not that they don't know. It's just that there's a critical lack of give a fuck because they have money to outlast it.
Basically, yeah.
And I don't want to be too charitable by ascribing that to ignorance or lack of perspective. I mean, there is
willing ignorance is a thing, certainly.
Yeah.
And
there's a malice to it.
Yeah, I think in some cases there are people in general don't like being told what to do, especially those of us who have grown up in cultures where the individual is considered, you were saying, Lily, earlier, kind of like the base component of society, but not just that. Some will go so far as even to say the individual liberty is like the highest moral point. I'd like to read more about that particular point of view because I don't get it. And I want to understand so that I can nudge you into another room. Just you don't even have to go in the room. Just open the door. Just open the door, take a look around, and see what all is going over here with the anarchists and the socialists and the anarcho-socialists, because they are not always the same thing. Just stand in the doorway, listen to some of the conversations, see if any of them perk your interest. Maybe that one over there will buy you a drink. They look open-minded, and they might not necessarily judge you for being pampered and born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Oh, sorry, that was a very long. I am one to do that. I call it me going on an extended metaphor, but it's more like a hypothetical scenario. There were no voices this time around, though. There was just hypothetical situations. I didn't play multiple characters this time.
But we do. I understand completely.
Well, the next thing, just to kind of move us along, although we do have about 45-ish minutes left to go, I wanted to talk a little bit about when folks who are, say, a little bit more on the political left, or at the very least, sure that conservatism is not for them, or what rugged individualism. That's the phrase that keeps coming to mind. I immediately think of Margaret Thatcher, and several famous speeches that she gave. Ragging on the socialists and saying, not like us in the Great Britain, where we have always said that the individual is the most important thing. So there's this idea that if you adopt collectivist social practices or society-wide rules, rules that are designed to benefit kind of the greater good, like a collective good, that suddenly individuality, individual autonomy goes away. It just disappears and shrivels up, blows away in the wind. One of those, maybe all of them.
They're going to take your toothbrush.
Like, do you have some isopropyl on hand? I'll dunk it in. If that means one less bit of plastic eventually ending up in the ocean, fine. That being said, please use your own toothbrushes. There are eco-friendly toothbrushes out there.
Pine cones.
But yeah, individual autonomy goes away. Personal property no longer exists suddenly. Like, why do you gotta jump all the way over there? It doesn't have to go all the way over there. You can actually take the useful things out of both of these philosophies and bring them together into a nice sandwich, nice s'mores.
Yeah, we're back to that whole element, though, of especially in America, the whole bipolar element. Let's take and it goes hand in hand with this, let's take every argument that goes against my own personal beliefs, or more importantly, my own self-interest, and immediately jump to its most logical or illogical absurdity. Every form of sitting around, of coming up with an idea that is something that benefits the community as a whole, also in the eyes of the people who are very interested in keeping that community from gaining a certain degree of power, suddenly becomes an infringement upon everybody else, or a loss of your particular sets of rights. And that's been a very effective form of argument that's been going on now since the 1980s.
And I think that it always has been said, that, that's a slippery slope. And, well, you know what? Not everything has to be a slippery slope. And it's also why they make
John Oliver put
shoes.
It, where does the line end? Here.
Yeah.
The line is drawn here.
It's very
You get
simple.
to the line, and then you stop.
Right. Yeah.
I do want to, I think it's a little disingenuous to, put this as, beginning in the 80s, because that's been the case for every civil rights issue throughout the history of at least our country.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to fucking 1776. It's always been that slippery slope. If we give these, if we give these people rights, where does it end? That's been the party line for before the party has existed.
Yeah, and the answer is it doesn't end. Every human has the same rights, and that is exactly what we're finally. We're starting. We have so far to go yet, but we're starting to finally see. I think more people are starting to finally see. At least last year, 67% of Americans saw that every human, regardless of who they are, what they believe, who they love, deserve the same exact human rights that everyone else does. And now we just need to move that needle, into the high 90s, because there's always going to be those few. But let's make them feel
of course, not everybody. People who say that, I think many of us would like to believe that we 100% believe that to be totally true. And I think if we all dug very deep, we would see that there are, at least, in that instantaneous knee-jerk reaction kind of way, there are a few people that we go, but I'm slightly more human than them, or this person over here is slightly more human than you.
Yeah, and that's
you're
the
an
trouble.
asshole. But and of course, and I think that has been what's kind of continued to push forward the idea. Like, look, you guys in the Enlightenment, you started this shit. You said that everyone was born equal, and you were like, except those people, not them.
Right.
Look, they're not like, they're like 75% human, and okay, yes, they kind of look like us, but they also kind of don't. So clearly, some different species entirely. We didn't mean them. We didn't mean them. But we've been trying to build on that and like shave it down to its more purer form.
Yeah,
Which
with...
I'm annoyed when people, particularly on the conservative side of things, start to rant and rave about identity politics, because I don't think that I think identity politics are, again, trying to get at that most basic layer of all people are created equal, or are born equal, if you prefer, depending on if you subscribe to a divine creator or that sort of idea. But in any case, all people are born equal, and that hasn't really been the case. But that's what we say we believe in, and so if that's what you say that you believe in, people leaning towards the more conservative type, if that's what you say you believe in, then we do actually need to keep going, because we're not there.
Yeah, and when it's a perfect cover to say you believe in something, because what we see happening, especially with people like, for example, Matt Gaetz, who say that they're for equality, who say that they're for this and that. It's a perfect cover for them operating, under the radar, so to speak, of people who aren't paying attention and subverting all of the things that they say that they're for. They're for that, but only if it benefits them in a very specific way. Otherwise, they're completely against it at their core, and they don't actually believe in it. But if it adds votes, or if it keeps them in power, then they'll say whatever's necessary. And I think that's the problem. Is there's, I could give examples of people that I know specifically who subscribe to that. They hear them say that and naturally just believe it without actually looking at what their votes were and how they legislated those values. And so I think everybody needs to always scratch below the surface and see what's going on with these people who tout equality and things like that. Make sure that that's actually what they feel.
Yeah, self-awareness and routine self-reflection that digs a little deeper, I think is something that more people are learning to do on their own. But in the particular cultural climate that we live in, it's not often put forward as a thing of value, to know thyself. And to know thyself well, and that includes, your admirable qualities and thoughts, and that includes your less than savory thoughts, and again, it comes down to action. I think a little bit more than what you personally in your head believe. Action matters just a little bit more, because it involves other people. If there were people who, in their heart of hearts, believed that this or that people born with this or that particular trait need to just fuck off into the ocean and never be seen or heard from again, but they treat those people respectfully. They don't allow their personal feelings to interfere with any decisions that they might have, although I think you could probably say that there's no you have to be
I'd
aware
like
of
to
your
find some
biases. You can't act completely without bias. It's humanly impossible. But
yeah,
you can
and
try.
I'd like to find some examples of that, because I think it's usually the exact opposite that we see. You know, we normally see the exact opposite. You know, I can't think of anybody. I mean, you know, you go to work, say, you know, you don't get along with one of your coworkers. Well, to be professional, you get along with them. You treat them with civility, and you know, you go home at the end of the night and curse them out on the way home while banging your hands on the steering wheel. But you know, you don't let it affect.
Pretty much just summed up my whole week. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Dave.
Yeah, it's just a matter of you know, you brought up an interesting point that sparked my thought. Kat, is that self-awareness is key. You know, if you yourself are one of those people who is trying very hard to be a better person or are a good person to begin with, and you say, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in equality, but then you find yourself doing things that aren't compatible with that, that's time to stop, you know, and say, what am I doing? You know, am I actually, you know, living, am I walking the walk, or am I just spouting out a lot of stuff that I think people will like to hear me say? You know, so self-awareness comes into play, you know, and be true to who you are. You know, if you're a raging lunatic, you know, racist bigot, then, you know, maybe it's better people know that. And so, you know, don't sacrifice, you know, who you are on the inside for other people. Act the way you feel, because then people like us and probably most of our viewers can avoid you.
I was going to say, the vast majority of people, I think, are operating from the perspective that, you know, they're a good person, or they might not even think of it in terms of like good and bad kind of thing, because again, those darn binaries. But you know, most people live the way they live because they think that that's how they should.
Right.
Very few people ever do anything to be evil, which is a funny thing for a supervillain to say.
It's all relative.
Evil for its own sake. I'm just saying, it's a thing. Throw it in, give it a try. You know.
I want to keep bouncing off that, and then I do want to bring up another aspect of the like political ideology that is individualism, and this is something I came across while I was putting together our show doc, the idea of competitive individualism, and this definition is taken from the Oxford English Dictionary. It is a sociological concept, the view that achievement and non-achievement should depend on merit. Effort and ability are regarded as prerequisites of success. Competition is seen as an acceptable means of distributing limited resources and rewards. And that sounds an awful lot like the espousments of diehard fans of capitalism, no? It's all interrelated.
Yeah.
Your classical economics.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of, you know, the people waiting in line.
Lily?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Ayn Rand, objectivism.
That was exactly where I was going to.
Her whole ideology.
I was going to say, it just kind of reminds me of the people waiting in line at Walmart on the day after Thanksgiving, and it's the ones who can get back to electronics who are going to get the deals. So if you are in any way physically handicapped or don't know where electronics is at Walmart, you have a disadvantage, you know. And so, you know, it's kind of like that. That's the first thing I thought of with it. You know, you can see how it literally invades every aspect.
Well, and it's hard for me to see how these two concepts, you know, the idea of valuing individual autonomy, I don't understand how you can reconcile that with this idea of competition in the way that it's normally referred to when you're speaking about individualism, speaking about capitalist economics, because there's limited resources, limited rewards. I mean, obviously, yes, we have limited resources in the world, but it's not totally impossible to sustain the entire population on Earth.
Exactly.
I've said it many times before on this show. I will say it again. It is an absolute myth that there is not enough food to sustain the current population. Like, yes,
Right.
you don't need 8 children. I mean, if that's what you want to do and you really love kids, I guess go for it. Not all of us need to do that. For the most part, like we're doing okay medically, and we're living longer and longer and longer. We don't need to have so many children as a means of continuing the population, really. Although who knows, maybe one of those 8 children that you have will be the person who comes up with the nanites when they're 7 years old because they're a prodigy.
You know what, though? I kind of like to think that the universe has a little bit more in store for us, in that if that 8th child isn't born, it'll assign that task to another individual out there that or not assign, but it more of,
they'll say they'll take care of it. I don't need to take care of it.
It'll come, someone else will pick up that mantle.
Yep.
and move forward, to where we need to be, because the universe always wants everything to go in the direction it's supposed to.
So pop up in the character creation screen. Yeah.
I was hoping things kind of drifted this way, because I do think, like, that idea of, like, this one person being the cornerstone of this, like, entire historical movement is founded in this idea of, like, the individual being of the utmost importance. Like, the whole great man theory of history is predicated on the idea that some people are just more important than other people, and that's just not how the world works.
Yes, see, and that is thank you for getting me back on track, Lil. Because that's these 2 ideas seem incompatible to me. You can't think like, well, all persons are born equal, and their individual wants, needs, and desires are the most important thing that we can possibly protect in this world. But also, some people, are just better than others. So.
Yeah,
I don't.
But you just said. You just said.
I don't agree that there's cognitive dissonance there, though.
I don't get it, man.
So no, the bridging piece between those 2 mindsets is that, like, people, like, there's this, like, moral character. The notion of moral character is the middle piece that's missing to bridge those 2. Like, there's this idea that these people that are successful, that are, they weren't born better. Like, and again, I don't believe this personally, just to be clear here. But, like, there's this idea that, sure, they weren't born better, but through their moral superiority, they achieved success. And that's the element that makes it not really, I don't agree that it's cognitive dissonance. I don't agree with that mindset, but I don't agree that there's a dissonance there.
I think that the element the funny part for me is that you sit there, and I'm not saying you, but we as a society will sit there and credit a degree of moral superiority to people, especially as we go back further in our history, who are basically involved in genocide. And the idea that that they were clearing the space out for people who deserved it more than they did. And I just sit there in kind of complete and utter shock. And mind you, I'm also in the beneficiary of a lot of that. So,
I mean, all 4 of us are.
Yeah. But the notion of that sort of moral superiority is basically kind of like a salve to the very idea that what you did was what someone did was rooted in a act that was heinous, but it was moral due to the way that we view those people around us who are not nearly as important individuals as we are. And I think that assigning that level of importance to, that's where it's kind of ironic in that it is both the individual, because that person is more superior because they are part of this group and a collective.
Yeah.
it just kind of ties in that way, and where one is basically used to support the other, or the argument basically becomes circular.
Mm-hmm.
I think that using the term more important and things like that is wrong. I think that the assignment of
I didn't know it was wrong.
responsibility, the assignment of responsibility is a little bit more of an in tune. So, you have people like, let's say, the leader of a country, that person's their morality of their importance isn't here nor there. They're not more important than the kid that was just born, but they have a different responsibility level that they've inherited through whatever they've done to get to that position. In a lot of cases, they've worked to get to that level of responsibility. But that doesn't mean that they're more
well,
important.
And regardless of whether they worked for it or not, they signed on for it.
Yes.
As long as no one, made them sign their government position oath with a gun pointed at their head, they asked for that responsibility.
But it doesn't make them better, and it doesn't make them more important.
That was just their individual choice to take on that responsibility.
Right. They just have a different responsibility to the planet.
Mm. Well, and also the whole this person in this point of power versus the kid that was just born on the street. I mean, the universe is chaos. The person that let's just go invented peanut butter. That could have been anybody, but it just happened to be Carver, Washington Carver. Yeah.
I thought it was that Peanut guy, Mr. Peanut.
Look,
it's going to be a couple hours, but I'll be by in a few hours. I'll knock on your lair's door. Be prepared for a punch to the arm.
This one though,
and Dave, your punishment for getting lost in your synths is to drive me, because I get sleepy on long drives. Which means more than 15, 20 minutes.
That's a lot of effort to punch me in the arm. It better be good.
Yeah, but if something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Okay, yeah. I understand that.
Just an excuse to take Kat to the safe house and be like, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, double. Yeah.
Perfect.
We've got about 20 minutes before we start to wrap it up. We talked a little bit about the whole idea of competition and whether some are more deserving or others. This is another thing that is kind of circling a lot in my brain recently, the idea of biological predestiny. And I feel like I could kind of apply that idea to this competitive individualism as well, because some people just happen to be more talented, some people just happen to be smarter, and people don't necessarily just happen to be smarter. They may have had the mental capacity to receive and to process and to use knowledge, but it didn't just happen. But again, I think it goes back to that biological predestiny kind of thing, where you were born into it, and it because it's biology, it's an indisputable fact. Therefore, if you try to argue against it, well, you're just a ding dong, aren't you? Because why would you be arguing with biological facts? This person is just clearly superior because of their bone structure, or because of the size of their skull, or the shape of their brow. It all comes back to the skulls.
I think though that one of the things to keep in mind is that when we sit around and we talk about a form of equality for individuals. All right, here's where I kind of trip into a phrase that could sound like George Orwell talking in Animal Farm. But there is kind of a point to it. The idea that all of us have a concept of possibility within us, but not all of us are going to be equal in the exact same sort of way. I am never, ever going to be able to break the world record in the 100-yard dash. I have, on the other hand, won multiple medals in judo competitions. Two different forms of human composition in terms of physical ability. You know, it's the capacity to be able to sit there and give people the opportunity to find the thing that they are going to be good at. And that's where, to me, there is this notion of capitalistic individualism where you can succeed no matter what is put up ahead of you. Yeah, well, guess what? If you have a fuckload of capital to be able to spend the time to find out what it is that you can do better than most, you are miles ahead of everybody else in that game.
Well,
no, go ahead.
So one of the problems with that, where capitalism gets its fingers in, basically, is this again tying back to objectivism a little bit here. Is this idea that the only deviation from the norm that is acceptable in a society is that which can be exploited or captured or turned into something.
She knows exactly where my brain is going. I love it. Please keep going.
Yeah,
I'm just fan squealing. That's all.
So there's this idea that okay, well, you're an artist. Well, are you any good? Is the first question that we, the thing doesn't have to be profitable or exceptional to be worth doing. And that's where that idea of competition, that even the notion of competition is not really in line with how we adapted as a species. There is practically some competition, practically speaking.
I was going to say it's a practical thing. Yeah.
But we succeed or fail as a collective. That's been the case since we were in the fucking trees.
We evolved to be social. It wasn't. It was a random trait that was the one that bumped us up a little bit and gave us the opportunities, which is another thing that I get back to. No, not even humans as a species. And this, I don't really like the idea of a divine creator, because I think it's a little arrogant to well, we were just designed to be better than everything else, so that's why we're the rulers of the world.
Well, when you talk,
because it was more than likely just random factors that came together to our benefit, and here we are today arguing about it.
Sure. And when you're talking,
thanks, random mutations.
When you're talking food chain, obviously the human race is sitting at the top of the food chain on the earth. We no longer have to run away from predators. We no longer have to forage for food, technically speaking. Competition is not part of our evolution. We're at the point now where
we're bad at it.
Where
soft,
capitalism,
flabby, no claws.
Yeah, capitalism, and the competition that it brings, it's unnecessary at this point. Like Kat pointed out earlier, there are, it's a complete fallacy that there are not enough resources on this planet to take care of every individual, not just food. It's the amount of resources for clothing and housing and things like that. It's all here. I mean, come on. It's obvious it's all here. And people that believe that there are those shortcomings are burying their heads in the sand and not paying attention to what's actually happening in this country, but in the whole world. And if we just were able to eliminate that stuff, life would just, we'd be talking Star Trek Utopia here.
TNG.
TNG. Exactly.
I just want it so much.
Get that Malthusian bullshit out of here. There's enough to go around.
Both of you, both Lily and Star, kind of bumped into this a little bit. Nope. The thought is gone. The thought is gone. Carry on without me.
It's not here either. I'm keep it on.
What? It was literally just there. Go ahead.
Lily touched on a philosopher who, Malthus, who is really kind of the foundational element of capitalism and the way that our world works at this point in time. And Malthus existed, I believe, in the 18th, maybe 17th century. I can't remember the time frame appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, anyone watching and doesn't know who this is, just substitute Thanos.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But Malthus basically said over time, his entire notion was that limited resources were always going to lead to a point of conflict. And at that point in time, I might have actually given him the benefit of the doubt, but in an era of modern logistics, the capacity to move things before they spoil, the ability to go, hey, there's a famine going on in someplace in Africa. Within 48 hours, we can deposit enough food and be able to move things into place to be able to sort that issue out. Yeah. What we don't have is the moral will at this point in time, or the ethical sense, to sit there and decide that that shit is really important.
Maybe that's where my brain was going a little bit. This idea of individualism as a guiding morality, because I think we have gotten so caught up in the paranoia of limited resources, limited rewards, limited rights. What if this group suddenly have rights? Are there less rights for me? But we get so caught up in that idea of it as morality, and we feel like, you know, it's correct for people to have personal responsibility and well, why should you get this thing just because you're in need? I made the thing, or I cultivated the thing, I purchased the thing. Why do you get it? It's mine.
Yeah, I don't need it, but I'm going to keep it because
logistically, like you said, like we've got plenty. We don't need to compete with each other. If we worked together, like there's plenty for everybody. We could all live insanely comfortably, and you know, people would have more time to exercise their individual liberties more if they were not bogged down in the whole idea of, you know, being a cog in the machine, which is hilarious given that, you know, rugged individualism is the idea that gets sold, but in fact it's really just like collectivism. It's
tribalism.
What's that?
It's tribalism. Me and mine are more important than you and yours. And
also, yes,
mine are all individuals, and you are a collective, and we're not dealing with you. Is kind of the overriding element that is something that we as a society have done since we have formed societies. Me and my friends are going to get together, and we're going to call ourselves this, and then you and your friends are going to get over there.
And then boom, the warriors.
Right, and then the issue becomes.
Excuse me, Dave has the contract now.
I'm sorry,
John and I are used to stumbling over each other. But I think that part of the major issue is that what we need, if we're going to sit there and address both individualism and collectivism, is a complete and utter overhaul of how it is that we view our place in the world.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
My view of how the world is based off the fact that I live in Omaha, Nebraska, living by the standards of most people, a pretty comfortable life. On the other hand, I should also be particularly concerned. This is where a degree of, I keep talking about social stability.
Mm-hmm.
Social stability fucking matters to me for somebody who lives in Vietnam, for somebody who lives in the Mideast.
Mm-hmm.
Their rights and their ability to live a life impacts me, because over time that shortness, that lack of capacity to live a better life drives people to, well, we had the January 6th event. We have terrorist groups. We have various other people who are willing to sit there and go, my life is fucked up and you are responsible.
As said by the great Guru Patik, the greatest illusion of them all is the illusion of separation.
Yeah,
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, but the entire notion, though, that any of us are particularly surprised when these events happen,
I mean, we shouldn't be.
We shouldn't be. We are sitting
Disappointed,
here.
not surprised.
I'm not, and all of the control of our assets, the control of resources, rests in a very, very small number of hands. The capacity to be able to sit there and make that change is something that we need to look at.
So you're saying we need to seize the
Means of production.
Production.
Yes, and distribution.
That's a good point, and that also actually we only have about 7 minutes left, and I just want to get cut. We may have to do a part 2 of this. We can talk a little bit more about the Malthusians idea, but it's not the same as communism, but anarchism versus classical liberalism, and how they both actually put individual liberties, individual freedoms, individual autonomy at the core of their philosophies, but the way that they go about obtaining that for as many people as possible and creating a social stability where that exists, or the possibility of it exists. What would you say, just like off the top of your head, what are the differences in how those two philosophies would go about it?
I mean, the defining element of anarchism is the reduction of hierarchies, is removing people's power over one another. So that's how anarchy accomplishes that.
And anarchism also, I'm gonna sit here and make sure that we define our terms, because anarchism, like a lot of other elements, has blown up into a lot of different sides and such. But I'm going to go with the anarchism Conan because it's the one that kind of fits my worldview the best. The idea of a stateless socialism. It removes tribalism from the equation. The capacity to sit there and go, I'm doing okay right now. All the stuff is in place. I'm ready to go. That person over there has a problem. Let's sort it out because it becomes a form and means of social stability.
Yeah, I know. You don't necessarily have to come at it from a moralistic standpoint, like, but it's the right thing to do to care about other people. I mean, you could say that. It's the practical fucking thing to do. Like, if that's all that matters to you, then think about it practically. It's going to affect you eventually.
Yeah, if I'm sitting
as strong as our weakest,
the practical is good, and then the moral element becomes the icing on the cake. Sorry, John.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just saying that, we're only as strong as our weakest member. So why not, boost that weakest member, help them out. Like you said, it's going to create more stability. And, it's not about taking from one person to give to another. It's about collectively making sure that everyone has what they need.
If everyone covered each other's asses, then everyone's ass would be covered, and there would be no naked asses.
I think it is
naive how much fun is that?
Ignore that, that achieving these goals will involve taking away from people who have a disproportionate amount.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. But see, what they're trying to push is that even individuals such as myself who don't have that immense wealth will lose out, and that's what's keeping this capitalism going is this perpetuation of the big lie that
you too could someday be a millionaire.
Exactly.
Oh, well, yeah.
But what if you were someday?
What if you work really hard?
You know what? I hope
statistically, no.
I hope I earn millions of dollars, but I never hope to be a millionaire. Because if I'm doing it right, I'll never have that kind of wealth accumulated. And other people will benefit from what I've been able to achieve through whatever, push-ups I've had, If it happens, it happens, and great. Well, I don't need millions and millions of dollars. Maybe that guy needs 10,000. Maybe that guy needs 10,000. Come on.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we lost.
Okay, I think I'm back.
I was hearing voices for a minute there. It was just coming
Yeah,
out.
yeah. I think my Wi-Fi died.
Oh.
So I just switched to, and of course now my notes are gone. Damn it!
Oh no!
In any case, I mean, you are absolutely getting at the thing. I think what the last thing I heard, was I hope.
Oh, I hope to earn
yeah.
millions of dollars, but I hope to never actually be a millionaire, because if I'm
Right.
doing it right, I'll never accumulate that wealth.
Right.
Well, and again, like if you have all that money in one place, it's not doing anything. So again, it's impractical. I don't appreciate that. Capital is only good if you can use it for stuff. Resources are only good if, well, I suppose that's there's another discussion there about, like, you know, resources don't exist for us to consume necessarily. But if we are cultivating them, if we are gathering them, if we are creating them, it's not necessarily, they're not necessarily going to be useful if you just hoard them. They are going to exist, but they are not going to be of use to anyone, even you.
Here's where I violate what I said earlier. You know, I said, you know, the whole self, consciousness and understanding that you walk the walk. I'm a tabletop gamer, so I personally have thousands and thousands of unpainted miniatures that I will never ever give up because they're mine, and I need them.
You are allowed to have personal property under the anarchical semi-government of the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. You are absolutely, in fact, millions of tiny painted figurines for all. Unpainted. Excuse me.
And therein lies my modus operandi of supervillainy, is hoarding miniatures.
Fair enough. Yeah. You're as long as your hoarding is not harming anyone, and you know, if you have to make room for some of those things, you recycle them, then we're all good.
No, what he's gonna do is he's gonna like blow up into giant monsters, Rita Repulsa style.
There we go.
I mean, at that point, we might as well just, you know, make King of Tokyo like a life-size board game instead of just a tabletop board game. King of Tokyo is excellent, by the way.
I'm going to play that tomorrow, by the way.
Yay! What were you saying, Lily?
Because it came out, there's a difference between personal property and private property. And
yes.
Personal property.
You want to tell me the difference?
I feel less bad.
Private property are things that you own that aren't really like logistically something you should be able to own, like land or a building or like this particular like machine that produces this thing, like that. Whereas like personal property are things that you could like possess and explain to somebody, like. The way I like to think about it, if you could explain it to somebody like, you know, 20,000 years ago that this is yours, then it's probably like personal property and not private property.
Okay. Does it was something that John said. John was bringing up, you know, thinking about it. I think it was riffing off of me saying, like, you don't need to think about a collective striving for the protection of individuality and the individual, because that can be a collectivist act. You were saying we are only as strong as our weakest link. I know I've been espousing the practicality of, you know, many of these ideas. Like it's very easy to go at it with a practical standpoint, but I'm going to subject you all to a thing that I wrote. Don't worry, it's very short. But I also like to say on this program that, you know, I agree with the idea that has been put forth by several folks who I follow. In particular, Angie Speaks, that we on the left have been historically neglecting the esoteric needs, the spiritual side, if you will, even if you don't believe in spirits or souls. If you are what is it, a materialist? Even if you are a materialist, there is still something to be said for feeding the esoteric needs of the individuals. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. I didn't write that part, obviously. We are only as humble as our worst braggart, as industrious as our laziest sloth, and as selfless as our greediest miser. We are only as honest as our best liar, and as noble as our most corrupt, and as kind and heroic as our utmost blackguard. We are only as learned as our least educated, and protected as our most naked and defenseless, and as free as our most exploited innocent. Each of us defines themselves, and in turn each other. The tiniest fault may stain all of humanity, but the slightest of brightness can inspire us to ever strive for that far-off perfection. It's a process.
Very well put.
So yes, I hope that fed your esoteric needs for the evening. Does anybody have any final thoughts that they would like to get out before we wrap things up, or things that you might like to talk about? I feel confident in saying when rather than if we do a part 2 of this. I don't know that it will necessarily be the next episode of Prosperity, but I feel pretty confident that there will be a part 2 of the pros and cons of individualism.
Yeah.
What's that, Dave?
I said this conversation can fill quite a bit of time because we keep stumbling into yet more moments of circular logic. But if I'm going to wrap it up for the end of this particular one, look, we are in the process of sitting around and watching a whole bunch of changes, trying desperately to be born at this point in time. So look for them, value them.
Trying desperately to what?
We have a whole bunch of changes that are looking desperately to be born at this particular moment.
Oh, got it.
So look for them and try to nurture them and create early and often. Nothing else that helps to broaden out your world while you do it.
Yeah, and it's more knowledge is almost always better.
True that.
You might not necessarily utilize it for anything practical, but creating new neural connections in your brain, typically speaking, is a practically useful way to go about existing. Lily, Star?
I feel absolutely fulfilled at this point.
because of your thousands of unpainted figurines?
No, that makes me anxious.
I have so many of them. I can't even hold them all at once.
If I gave them all away, I'd probably be less anxious, but I'd have a panic attack and probably some kind of mental breakdown if I did. So, it's a vicious circle. I just can't get out of. Somebody just come and paint with me, please.
I tell you what, I'll send Moof up to you. Maybe I'll just send him to go punch you in the arm for me, because he also has many figurines and many painting supplies that he has gathered over the years. To be fair, I have never painted any of the plastic figurines that I have, including my favorite D&D character, a nudist druid named Jebby. He's Scottish, and he brews beer in the forest, sky-clad.
I'll paint them. I say that.
My queen, anything to wrap up from you?
Nothing that would wrap this up. So many more.
Anything that would you like to come back when we do a part 2, or health, or anything else for that matter?
Please.
I'd be happy to have you on again. I don't have any particular thoughts other than thank you all for being here with me and talking about these things. I see Rick is in the chat there. Thank you, Rick, for joining us. I'm sorry that we're cutting it quick. We started at pretty much exactly 4:30, and I said we're going to stop at 6. I know it's a little bit after, but we had a little bit of a technical kerfuffle there with the internet suddenly disappearing. Actually, here, I'll just boop it and it will be displayed. I booped it. Let us beat down those seeking to choke those seedlings of hope as well. Yes, thank you very much for sharing. So next week is a popcorn episode. We are going to be starting a little bit earlier than we normally do. I mean, anything is earlier than we normally do, to be perfectly frank. Although we did a good job this week. But probably about 3:30 Central Time. I must attend a wedding, and so we're trying to get everything together. The doctor and I will nail down a time for certain, and I will share that on the socials beforehand. In this popcorn episode, we will be pouring over the history of lolcats, or LOL cats, if you want to call it that, and also the villains to whomst we would pledge our allegiance to. Or that there's 2 twos in there. Not only is whomst not a word, I put in too many twos.
It was just flexible.
And the villains to whomst we would pledge our allegiance, whether as a nameless expendable minion or a sexy second in command. We will also be playing a game I just made up today called Good Form, Bad Form. And you'll just have to join us next week to find out what the fuck that all is about. But for now, lots to do, lots of plans to plot. And I still need to go gather up my tools of architectural evil so that I may plot my plans. Thank you, everyone, again for joining here today. That goes for the folks in my, I suppose, with all of us together here. The layout, we can't see my little stage dressing background, but being in this metaphorical room with me, I really appreciate you and your thoughts and your sharing and your speaking to each other and to me. And I appreciate everyone who joined us in the chat. And sorry about the technical kerfuffle there with the internet dying. Curse you, cocks! Han, I do see you there. I appreciate you jumping in at the last minute, and even if just to say hi. Hello. Everyone, please have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful week. I thank you so much for spending time with us. Please remember that you are a beautiful, unique snowflake, and that if you've been hanging out in toxic clouds, no one's going to want to invite you to be part of their really cool ice fort down the street, okay? So it's fine, the good parts of individualism and collectivism, and bring them together so that we can create an avalanche of awesome. This weekend, please be sure, or next week, whenever you have the time, please take the time to do something purely for the joy of it. And even if it's just for 10 minutes, and then take another 10 minutes later on to do absolutely nothing. Because you are more than what you produce. You have value outside of the things that you do, the things that you say, the thoughts that you think. I love you all a lot. See?
Yay, we love you too. Love everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye now.